Bonsoir tout le monde. Hello, everybody. Um, I'll try to keep this live relatively short. I know that Melissa Jane is doing a live right now. Shout out to her. And I believe, let me check, but I believe Uncle Stu and Before the Billions are also doing a live. Yeah, Before the Billions is definitely still doing a live right now. And I think Uncle Stu is also doing a live, but I'm not sure. So I don't want to keep you guys from supporting them. So shout out to Before the Billions and Uncle Stu as well. So if you guys want to just simply put me on the background and play this live just to give me some watch time, that's absolutely fine. Don't worry. So I'm glad that whoever is here is here. And if you catch me on the replay, that's absolutely fine as well. I hope you guys are going to enjoy tonight's show. Tonight, we're going to talk about a Canadian artist, a Quebec artist to be exact. His name is Jean Paul Riopelle. I repeat because obviously, as you guys know, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I teach you guys a little bit of French. So, of course, I have to pronounce the name in French. So, it's Jean Paul Riopelle. He is from Quebec, and we'll get into a little bit of his work and who he is as an artist and what he's done. So, like I said, hopefully, you guys enjoy this work. I haven't forgotten, I know Natasha Vincent, and I believe not before the billions, Blind Guy, his wife, their life had asked me to deal with this particular artwork video that they had seen on my channel. That's pretty interesting. So I'll try to do that next week. So keep a lookout for that, Natasha Vincent. And hopefully that video will be interesting for you. And I hope that you'll learn a lot. So if you guys do have suggestions, I'm not necessarily going to because you suggested, I'm going to do it automatically, but I'll at least consider it or see how I can integrate it properly into my content. So we're going to get into the content. And like I said, I won't spend a whole lot of time on this video, on this live. Um, I will have the links to everything that I show or talk about in the description as usual. So if you guys do want to learn more or go above and beyond what you're seeing in my video, you will have the opportunity to do so. So, to give you guys a little bit more of a background of the artist, he is a Montreal born artist. So, he is from my hometown. He was born in October 7th, 1923, and he passed away in March 12th, 2002. He is an important artist for Montreal, for Canada, for several different reasons. One, because he was in that time period for art in general, where artists were really contesting the typical traditions of what art meant. Don't forget, up until this time, um, up until maybe the 1940s, 1950s, let's say 1960s even, most artists were still part of what was called the modern art time or art period or art movement, right? So artists were still required, even though there was a certain amount of liberalism, a little bit of self, interpretation and self direction in your artwork. For the most part, you still had to create art that was realistic, that followed artistic traditions, and really um, was kind of the kind of art that you would see in ancient Greece or ancient Rome, right? That it was really something that um, you would see Socrates talk about. But for modern artists, so when I say modern artists, I mean artists born in early 20th century and beyond. For a lot of them, it's not just about, okay, I have to paint portrait of, let's say, the queen or of my friend, and I have to be uberly realistic. I have to basically make it as if it's a photograph. Take somebody like Picasso as well, for example. Um, Even though he did create realistic paintings, a lot of his paintings were abstract. A lot of his paintings were of objects, of inanimate items, etc. So a lot of the artists were rebelling against those traditions, and they really were not creating art for the sake of creating art in the way of how their parents or grandparents were teaching them to do it. They really want to create art that was different, that was unique, that was above and beyond. Like, okay, for example, of course, another big tradition in modern art, for example, is that you're creating art based on religious stories. So you'll have scenes of um, Jesus being born, for example, or you'll have scenes of from the Old Testament of Adam and Eve being created, or of Eve being tempted, etc. With modern art, they continue that, where you're still showing scenes of religious natures, but you might incorporate modern figures, right? While as contemporary artists, so artists like Jean-Paul Riopelle, for example, you would have artists that are just painting a Coke can, or they're painting a wall, or they're doing graffiti or street art, however you want to call it, right? They're not painting scenes of religious figures, or if they do incorporate religious themes, they're inverse. They're making it more the background theme rather than the central figures, right? Um, if you guys aren't really 100% sure of what I'm talking about, you guys can go back to my live video from, I believe, 3 weeks ago, where I was talking about um, Kent Monkman. He had a Hey Lashes, how you doing? I'm glad to see you here. Glad to have you here, and I hope Kayla did well today at school. Wink, wink, nod, nod. But yeah, so today, Lashes, we're talking about a Canadian artist named Jean-Paul Riopelle. Okay. So I'm explaining a little bit of the background for this artist. Okay, so you didn't miss a whole lot. I just started a few minutes ago. I was a little bit late, so don't worry, you didn't miss a whole lot. Okay. So for Jean-Paul Riopelle, for Kent Monkman, which, like I said, he had a video. I did a video of him 2 3 weeks ago. He incorporated religion more in the background, but also, some major scenes of angels. But he also had little minor symbols, like he would use the symbol of the fish, which is often a symbol of Jesus, right? So for modern artists, more contemporary artists, they might incorporate religious themes, but more in the background, more in the imagery, rather than flat out, portraying a scene. So if they incorporated angels, for example, they weren't necessarily incorporating the angel Gabriel, for example. They had just a nameless angel there, where it was just pointing towards the sky. I think with Kent Monkman, right? So it's not just retelling of the stories in the Bible. It's they're interpreting religious figures, or they're purposefully reversing the message that's often associated with that religious story or figure, right? So for Jean-Paul Riopelle, for example, he had a big interest in Native American stories and Native American themes. So he had a lot of animal figures, for example, that are important in some Native American cultures, like the owl, for example. You'll see a lot of owl figures in his paintings. So um, that was a big rebellion, and a lot of the early artists that started this, like Jean-Paul Riopelle, were often set aside, were often chastised, were often excluded from art exhibits or art expos, etc., and were quite often chastised by the art world because for a long time, um, artists really were still sticking to the traditions. And don't worry, Lashes, take your time to wake up. I know that we had a late night, so don't worry. Yeah, so Jean Paul Riopelle is known in Montreal and in Canada in general as being one of the first Canadian artists to really rebel against those standards that was set, that we had to, in art, in education, in life in general, you had to do what was expected of you, right? You had to follow the statu quo. Don't rebel, don't rock the boat. If the teacher asks you to draw a dog, you draw a dog as realistically as possible. Jean-Paul Riopelle wanted none of that. Okay. He also was important in Quebec society as a whole because he, along with several other artists and authors and poets, etc., were part of what's called the Refus Global, the global refusal. Okay. And this was a manifesto that was written in 1948 that a lot of Quebecers announced their refusal to follow what was expected of them by the Catholic Church. Because for those of you that don't know, Quebec is very highly dominated by the Catholic Church. And until the 1940s, until the 1950s or so, give or take, everything was run and done by the Catholic Church. So, of course, the Catholic Church, hence why a lot of art was of religious themes, obviously did not like Jean Paul Riopelle for two reasons. Obviously, his art wasn't reflective of what was expected of the artwork, but he was literally going against the religious expectations of artists, of people in general. Okay. But for us in Montreal, he was also important because he created a particular statue specifically for the Olympics when they came to Montreal in 1976. I'll try to see if I can find it and show it to you guys later. This particular artwork was originally, if you guys don't know, that we have what's called the Olympic Stadium, which is still standing and still part of the Montreal decor. This artwork was originally there, but it has since moved to a particular metro station. Please, I believe it's the um, Place des Arts metro station, but I could be wrong on that one. So don't quote me on that. But it's been moved to somewhere else. Okay. So this is an artist that's very well known, and part of the reason why I want to mention and talk about him is that, sorry, I'm eating a little bit of dinner as well. He had an exhibit during the summer at the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. To me, I like his work, but don't like his work. And I find it's interesting, but not always. It's like his piece tends to be very repetitive. So it's like once you've seen one of his works, you've seen all of his works, unfortunately. Okay. But we'll go through a little bit of it and show a video, a couple clips of his work and so forth, so that you guys can see a little bit of what he does. Hey, Bouger, how you doing? Shakila, not wink, wink, nod, nod. Thank you guys for being here. I know Bouger. I think Bouger is Melissa still doing her live? I think she is, right? So I don't want to take too much time here, because Melissa Jane is doing a pretty interesting live about whether or not therapy is needed, how do you know, etc. Still, it's still fairly interested, and I do want to be able to participate in that live as well. So I'll try to keep this as brief as possible, but still as interesting, so that um, everybody at least learns a little something from this video. So the first thing I'll do is I'll share the screen, and we're going to show a little bit of the description of the exhibit of Jean-Paul Riopelle at the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. So we're going to go here. So as I was saying, last video of my Let's Talk, the Arts Come to Life, don't forget to go on your museum's websites, because a lot of them have content that you can see for free on their online website. Again, absolutely free and for the public. Now, some of the content you might have to be a member of the museum. Like these videos, technically, I can view them either as a member on the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, but they're also available on YouTube. So in the description, I also link to the video that I'm going to show you guys in a minute, but also to the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, um, their YouTube webpage. So their channel, I should say. So definitely, guys, if you want to see some of their the content of the Fine Arts Museum of Montreal, definitely go onto that channel and check it out. Again, the YouTube channel is free, and you can watch whatever content they have. And if there is a particular artist or artwork or what have you that you want me to talk about, please let me know. Okay. So these are some of the videos. As I said earlier, Jean-Paul Riopelle has a passion for Native American art and history and culture. So a lot of his work will go back to that theme. So you'll notice that a lot of his work incorporates animals, particularly owls, that do in some Native American culture have an important factor. So, as you can see, this is the general description. That's the other thing that I like about going to the websites for the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. As some of you guys know, I am an amateur photographer, and I often go to the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts and take photos of the exhibits that are there. And most of the time, most of the exhibits and most of the artwork are artifacts. And I do, in one of my last videos on the arts come to life, I do talk about the difference between art and artifacts, right? Um, so the artifacts that are found at the museums tend to be, at least here in Montreal, you can take photos of them as long as you don't use flash, right? So that's what's really great. So, and they also all tend to have what's called the descriptors. So, what I would do is I would take a photo of the artifact, a photo of the description, and then go put that on my Flickr. And then when I have a moment, I then add the information from the descriptor to the artifact. I do have to at one point, because I keep swearing to myself I'll do it, but I have to do at one point, like before the billion, have a quote unquote late night work session. I don't know if I'm going to do it at 11 o'clock at night like he does, and especially I don't want to encroach in his time. So I might do it at maybe 10 o'clock in the morning or something, where I just spend an hour with you guys and I'm just like doing that editing with you guys, right? I'll have to see. But especially since, like I said, I did get a second job and I'm still waiting for them to contact me to set up the start date and all that, but we'll see. Anyways, so as you can see, I would come here. So now for this particular exhibit, what I did is a lot of the information I would add to my Flickr account about this particular exhibit I would come here and add it to it as well. So that way people would have all of this information. Okay, so as you can see here, they give you more information about the artists, about the exhibit. So it says, of course, the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts is dedicating a major exhibition to Jean-Paul Riopelle. He was born in 1923 and passed away in 2002, a towering figure in Canadian, Quebec, and international modern art. Based on original research, the exhibition explores the artist's interest in the North and Indigenous cultures, right? So again, he focuses a lot in Native American art. So when we say North, oftentimes that refers to what we call here in Canada the Inuit. But I think for a lot of Americans, you guys call them the Eskimos, right? So those are the people that live in igloos, typically wear the fur coats and so forth, right? So that's that. So hello, quote, quote, wink, wink, nod, nod, Kurt Russell. Glad to see you here. So obviously, this would be a website that I would go to get more information. So as you can see here, this particular work is one of the works that, as you can see, they restored it because apparently I did see the video of it. They had this work, I think, in another museum. The other museum had just basically left it in their archives for the longest time. And of course, once the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts did this exhibit, they sent it over to the MMFA, so Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, and that's when the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts restored it, right? So these are some of the works that that were shown in the exhibit of Montreal Museum of Fine Arts of Jean-Paul Riopelle. So I think this is something that's done as well in the US, but I remember playing, it's called the string game, right? So oftentimes it was girls that did this, but apparently for the Inuit, this was the game that originally started with the boys, but has been passed down now to both boys and girls, but mostly girls. And you would basically move the strings with your hands in a certain way, and you would pass that on to the other girl, and she had to do the strings in a certain pattern, right? I never really got the game as a kid. I never really liked it myself, but it was still interesting to see that being played and shown. So that was pretty fun. So yeah, so this is another piece that was shown. And again, in a few minutes, I will be going into talking a little bit of these pieces. Again, I don't want to spend too much time. I do want to, I think that, like I said earlier, there's a couple other people that are live. And I do want to make sure that you guys can spend as much time with me, but also spend time with them as well. Okay, so I'm just going to stop the share for a second here. And we'll show a quick clip of one of those videos that you saw at the bottom earlier from the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. And again, it's going to be um, a link that I have in the description of this video. So you guys will be able to watch the full video later on. Obviously, like I keep saying, guys, you do have to be careful when you play video from another person's channel. They may not always like it or allow it. Okay, so be mindful of that. So I'll get to that video right now and play maybe 30 seconds of it just so that you guys have a quick sense of it. So this one is going to be called Au regard de Kanien'kehá. And I know I butchered that name. I'm sorry for anybody who's part of that Native American tribe. If you do know how to properly pronounce the title of this video, please let me know. I do want to make sure that I pronounce things properly. So again, if anybody listens to this and knows how to properly pronounce it, please let me know. So I'm going to share the video and we're going to watch, like I said, maybe 30 seconds of it. So we're just going to make this a little bit bigger here. I'm going to play, like I said, maybe 30 seconds, a minute of it, not more.
Riopelle's intentions were to give reverence to the land, to pay homage to the land, to give a sense of place to his groundedness to his place. And I think for Indigenous artists, these are like fundamental to the kind of work that we do. Giga Jokwa, Zwadonsius ne Ganhigari Wessa, Negigo Agridanoro no Waxanoda ne Ganyakahaga na Jatodo, Ganhoage ne Duag Midwageno. Kwa Wanurunqua Zawagwego. As a practicing artist, as someone who gets his hands dirty with ink and deals with paper and tries to create these types of things, I think that when I go to exhibitions, personally, I go to appreciate the artists, but I also go for inspiration.
So as you can see, that's what's great about the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts and about artists in general, is that, especially nowadays, a lot of the artists try to support each other. Sorry, I'm eating a little bit of dinner while I'm talking to you guys here. I had one of those late days. Somebody in the chat knows why. Somebody knows. So obviously I didn't have as much energy and time to eat earlier, but I'll try not to be too rude about it. Anyways, so as you guys can see, a lot of artists really try to support each other and try to inspire each other, try to better themselves. And especially now, contemporary artists are aware of trying not to, quote unquote, steal each other's work, not to steal each other's cultures, right? Doing that whole cultural appropriation versus appreciation, right? So that's kind of when, let's say, I, as a Black Canadian, I'm walking around with a kimono, right? A kimono is obviously a Japanese way of dressing, right? If I do it here in Canada, it might seem a little bit weird. It might be considered as inappropriate because it is considered as a part of Japanese culture. And I'm clearly not Japanese. While as if I were to spend time in Japan, whether it was on vacation or maybe I decided to move there because I married a Japanese man or what have you, wearing Japanese clothes, eating the food, trying to speak the language, trying to practice the religion might be a way for me to integrate myself into their world. So even though I'm not, sorry, I'm getting under the weather here as well. So sorry if I cough or my nose sounds blocked. So yeah, so it would be much more of a question of me trying to integrate myself into the culture, into the country, and really trying my best to be part of their world, right? Even though it's clear that I'm not Japanese myself. So that's what was really great with an artist like Jean-Paul Riopelle, is that he's trying to maybe focus his work and his attention on Native American, but acknowledging the fact that he is not Native American himself. So again, the link to this video will be in the description. I believe that this particular person that you're seeing the back of is a Mohawk, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure. So again, if anybody knows better, please let me know. But he was speaking his Native American language at the beginning of the video, as you saw. So that was interesting. And that was really fun to see that. So we're going to go into talking about a couple of the pieces that were shown in the exhibit. Again, I'm trying to make this as quick as possible just because I want to make sure that we're able to go to Melissa's channel and video and or support Before the Billion and a real Uncle Stu, who's having a conversation with Kanien'kehá, but he now seems to be having other people on his panel as well. So I'm just going to present a couple of the pieces that were on in the exhibit. So let me just find the right ones here for you guys. So in this exhibit, there were quite a few different masks that were there and other instruments. Let me see. Okay, that one was definitely interesting. And I'll find, oh, this one was good. Okay, so I'll show two pieces. And as usual, I do link to my, what's called my Flickr account. So you guys can definitely see, excuse me, my work, my photos that I took of this particular exhibit. So I'm just going to share my screen with you guys again. So again, give me a second here, guys. So the first item is this. Okay, now obviously, I don't know, maybe Lashes, if you're listening, I don't know what you call this in Jamaica. I was going to say Japan. I had Japan on my mind, but Jamaica. Uh, Here in Montreal, we would call this a ladle or ladle like an item. But we're going to go ahead and close. So as you can see, it is obviously animal theme. And it would, sorry if you, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. As you can see, the handle of it is inspired a lot of the Native American totem poles, where each animal represents a family member or a family. So it shows the link between one individual or one family. So you have a frog, you have other animals. I'm not too sure what these other animals are, but this top one here is definitely a frog, right? So a totem pole tells a story of that particular family, and you often would see the totem poles at the entrance of a village. So you would know the history of the village, and the leader of the village, oftentimes if he had a son or several sons, um, the second son or the third son would literally take his wife and children and create a new camp and consequently create a new totem pole. The first animal might be the animal of his father, and the second one might be his animal, and so on and so forth. So he's showing the heritage and then the continuing story of himself. And of course, the children would add their totems, their totem animals, and so forth to it. So that's really interesting that it in this instrument incorporates, that idea that each section of the handle is a different animal and telling a story. So, and it is actually a ladle. So here we have a little bit of a description of the item. Okay, so it's a mountain sheep horn that's being used with apstone shell copper. Okay, it was a gift of F. Cleveland Morgan. Okay, so to describe it a little bit, we're going to see the description here. So precious objects that were worn or used by nobility display the clan's crest and demonstrate their wealth. So even in Native American cultures, as you can see, they had a sense of hierarchy, of social status, right? Um, so for us, we often think of Native American cultures as these peoples that are in touch with natures and are very humble and very down to earth, very grounded. But even in some Native American cultures, a lot of them will be, no, I am slightly different from you because I have a, a certain heritage, I have a certain amount of wealth to me, right? So we often think that these ideas are very European or very Western, when in reality many cultures have a sense of status, a sense of differentiation between individuals because of money, right? So that's one item that we're going to talk about. The next item, and like I said, after this, I'm going to move on and going to go back to Melissa Jane's video and also to have my dinner because, like I said, I'm a bit tired tonight. Somebody here knows why. Won't call them out, but I'm a little bit tired tonight, a little bit under the weather, so I do want to make sure that I can present this content to you, but I do need to do a little bit of self care as well. So, the second item that we're going to talk about briefly is this one, where I'm going to show you guys in a second. And again, if you guys have questions, if you guys have suggestions or things that you want me to spend a little bit more time on or what have you, do let me know. So, okay, I'm going to show this second item here. So, we're going to go look through this a little bit here. So as you can see, this item combines what two of the things that was mentioned earlier, where Jean-Paul Riopelle is rebelling against modern art. This is a painting where you can tell by the shape that it is an owl, but most modern artists, if they were truly modern artists, would have painted this uberly realistic or as realistic as possible. So here you have this abstract painting of an owl. We can tell that it's an owl, but what kind of owl? Where is it? Doesn't blue represent the ocean? Does it represent water? What's going on here? So with this kind of art, not only are you not 100% sure of all the different elements or facets that are present in the painting, what you're seeing for the first time is the painting is open to interpretation, right? What does this mean for you? So even though Jean-Paul Riopelle is representing an animal that for Native American cultures hold, or some of them holds a pretty big significance, for us in the Western world or in Canada in general or what have you, for some of us, for me, for example, an owl is an owl. I mean, I'm not going to put a special significance to it. But for some people, an owl represents knowledge. It represents wisdom, right? For other cultures, it might represent it's a predator, and oftentimes, so it might represent hunting or savagery or what have you, right? So an owl may not mean the same thing. So since here we don't see what owl it is, what it's doing, what it's looking at, you don't even see its eyes, right? So what does this owl mean for you? What I would say is going to be different from what Lash's Journey might say, from what Bouger might say, from what anybody else that's going to see this video might say. And that's okay. As you saw, the description in the other video wasn't necessarily, oh, this painting, this item, this ladle means this exactly. What you saw in the description of, hey, some of Native American cultures, your status meant something, how much money, your wealth uh, gave you a certain amount of recognition or power, right? So we're going to go a little bit into this particular item here, right? So the title of it is called Grand Duc or Grand Duke, okay? So it is an owl, as you can see, and it is a frontal view of the figure, increases in monumentality due to the tuft shapes emerging from either side of the bird's head, like cast shadows. Okay, so here is just a general description of the painting rather than telling you this painting means this painting means that, right? So that's what you see a lot in contemporary art, is that it's okay for you to have your personal interpretation of the painting. So even though for a lot of artists, they might have an idea, they might have a thought, like I said earlier, for Jean-Paul Riopelle, he was very much contesting how things were done by modern artists that were telling people, no, you have to paint in this way, you have to do this, you have to paint these things, these particular themes, I should say. For him, it's, oh, you want me to paint an owl? Here's an owl painted, you know. But that's not how modern artists wanted their students to paint an owl. And, oh, you want to know what it's about? You tell me what it's about, right? It's so his message was, don't have a message, don't have a theme, don't have a idea, have several ideas and let people pick what they think is right. But even if an artist has a specific idea or a specific message, um, they realize that, look, um, other people are going to come around and interpret that message and have their own thoughts about it, and that's okay. In fact, a lot of artists want you to have your own particular thoughts and ideas and inspire yourself from this particular artist. Okay, so basically that's it for me tonight, guys. So it was relatively quick, as you can see, a little bit over 40 minutes, and I did start a little bit late, so sorry again for the tardiness. But that's it. That's all for me tonight, guys. I will be coming back up live, hopefully Thursday morning, to continue my half an hour of reading Game of Thrones with you guys, and I hope to see you guys then. And Friday night, I hope, I keep pushing it off because I keep oh yeah, I'm going to spend 2-3 hours a day reading this book, reading that book. I do, as you can see, have technically scheduled for Friday night my conversation about the book Graveyard by Neil Gaiman, and I hope to be able to read the book finally this week so that I can give you guys my thoughts on that book on Friday night. But in any event, I will see you guys in the streams. Thank you, Lashes, Journey, and family. So Kurt Russell and Kayla for being here. And thank you, Bouger Prepper, for stopping by. I know you're technically, I saw you at Melissa Jane's live. So thank you for taking a moment to say hi to me and spending 30 seconds with me. So you guys know how I end my streams. If there's somebody that you haven't, yeah, thank you, Lashes. So if there's somebody, you guys, that you haven't said I love you to, like a daughter that might not be doing her homework on time, tell her that you still love her even when she doesn't do her homework on time. Give your friends, your family member, whoever it is, a big hug and kiss for me. And I'll see you guys on either Melissa Jane's live, Before the Billions live, or Uncle Stu's lives. I know I have all three of them going in the background right now. So if it's not one of those, we'll see you guys in these YouTube streets. Big bisous, big kisses, hugs, and love to everybody. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I hope you guys have a great night. And take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourselves. If you haven't told yourself, you know what, I love you, go ahead, feel free. Say it now. Do it. Like Melissa Berrien would say, do it now. Right? So I love you guys. Have a great night.